Hi, thank you for joining us at Speaking in Code. We are coming to you live from the EDUCADE Conference at 2026 here at the Orleans Casino and Hotel. I'm your host, Nathan Ball, joined by Topher Barnes as our producer, and today we are proud to welcome COO of International Code Council, Mr. Mark Johnson.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. All right, so I think a lot of our viewers and a lot of members of International Code Council, they want to know what is going on with the front part of our name, right? The international part. So can you touch on some of the things that are going on internationally with ICC?
Sure, Nathan. Really putting the I in international is ICC activities abroad. We work in a lot of countries. One area of importance to us currently is the Middle East. We have countries like Saudi Arabia that have been using our ICC-based codes since the early 2000s. Also, Abu Dhabi uses our building codes. And more recently, under the stewardship of Hamid Nadiri and Judy Zakreski, ICC staff, they've worked with the country of Oman to develop 6 building codes based on the 2021 ICC codes. We've also made tremendous inroads in the Caribbean with regards to Jamaica, also Trinidad and Tobago. Haiti uses some of our codes, and also more recently in Central America, producing a building code for the country of Belize.
Okay.
And also too, we've added Jose Rug to our to ICC's staff, and he's going to be working in basically the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, because we see a lot of inroads that we can make there.
So, just as a layman who looks at it, and obviously, like I'm fluent in English, and that's it. How big of a challenge is it to basically take a code and convert it into translate it into another language that you and me and a lot of people aren't familiar with, but making sure that it meets the intent and has that verbiage?
That's a great question. Well, here's the good news. The good news is when we work in the Middle East, English is the language of choice. Even though they're Arabic speaking, most of the technical documents, engineering documents, code documents, are in fact in English. In the Caribbean, very similar with the exception of Haiti, which is in French. But some of the challenges we've experienced in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, where they wanted to do a conversion into Arabic for more of the inspector community that's more fluent in Arabic than necessarily English, that's been a challenge. We've had to work with local entities to help with the translation, but also have technical review of what the translators translate. So it is a challenge. One of the biggest challenges too is dialect. It's like Spanish, Arabic. Not all Spanish and Arabic is created equal, right? It depends on the region, the country. So you always have a little bit of one-offs when you're dealing with these languages. So there is some major challenges. One of the biggest challenges I think that we've experienced is the referencing of standards. The codes reference more than 1,500 standards, but when you're working internationally, a lot of these countries reference maybe British standards or German standards. So how do you coordinate that with maybe US-based codes, and how do you weave that in where you don't create barriers to trade because you're selecting only US-centric standards? So there's a lot of issues that affect trade that come into play that are not necessarily germane to public safety, but also if you're not careful, you could create barriers to trade, which would be problematic.
I would think that, I mean, inspectors here have a hard time differentiating between shall and must. I can imagine what it's like in making sure that is such an emphasis when you do make those translations. That's amazing. What are some of the things that ICC nationally are excited about?
I'd say the big areas of excitement, I think for ICC and its staff, and I know our CEO, John Belsic, is one area we're focused on is affordability. As we know, that model codes obviously are focused on safety, but they also have to take into consideration affordability. So we're putting a lot of time and effort into affordability studies and how we could do things better and smarter without lessening necessarily the safety level. The other thing we're really excited is about innovation. How do we make sure that our codes do not become a barrier to progress? And that's where our subsidiary ICC Evaluation Service comes into play. Our evaluation service is designed to evaluate innovative building products and systems that meet the performance criteria of our codes. So what that allows is for new products from manufacturers to be accepted into the marketplace through our evaluation service, which evaluates testing data and data related to these products to ensure that they meet the intent and the performance criteria of our building codes. So it makes sure that, that our economy remains fluid, but we still keep that level of safety and make sure that codes and standards do not become obstacles to progress. Joan O'Neill on our staff, we hired her about 3 years ago. She was brought in to help us with our digital transformation and has done a fabulous job. I don't know if you've ever seen our product, Digital Codes Premium.
I have, yeah.
But amazing product. We have over 16 documents on code, standards, support material, older editions, digitized. And we're adding features such as AI features, code calculators, those tools to our software.
Okay.
And I think that's going to make both building departments and designers, builders a lot more efficient. And we're driving down the cost to access intellectual property. So now you can get 1,600 of these documents at a fraction of the price. It's almost like 5 cents a document when you add it up.
Wow.
So I think we're making tremendous progress there. Our commitment to technology in terms of CDP access for use in submitting code changes, providing that software to our market where people from other countries can participate in our code development process remotely. These are tools that we're investing time and effort into to better serve our members, both at home and abroad.
You touched on the calculator. Like, is that like a calculator that we would think about, like being able to to make some changes or to maybe input some information and make sure it meets loads?
Yeah, there's some of them are structural calculators for the different materials.
Okay.
Wood, steel, but also too we have plumbing pipe sizing calculators.
All right, that's helpful.
Yeah, and also we're coming out with a calculator on heights and areas.
Okay.
So there's going to be a pretty diverse grouping of calculators hitting different subject areas of the code. But before we were trying to really bring all the content together and integrate it, but now we're trying to provide context to using those codes and using them more effectively. And then the AI tool has been very, very interesting. I play around with that quite frequently. I like to kick the tires, critique it where possible, but I've seen it evolve and continue to get better. Where I don't think we're at a point where we could turn everything over to AI. I think we all agree on that, but I think it's making us more efficient and getting us to the right answer quicker.
I know that in my role, we try to use as much AI as obviously the jurisdictions allow us to, but it has increased the time from when I have to research a code to when I find it. And I think that that's really where that benefit to our organization or our community of inspectors and stuff like that really kind of benefit from the AI. We're not being taught the code, but we're just finding it a little bit quicker. So I think that it's a great tool. One of the things that I personally found that I liked in the new 2024 codes were the QR codes, because I liked the ability to be able to research why that code made a change. Show me where the changes were, and I can see how the code was changed and why it was changed and what actually the change was. So I think that that's a great thing that you guys have put in the codes.
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to Joan O'Neill because she's going to be really happy you said that. She's been very supportive of the QR codes and a champion of that. So kudos to her, and I'm glad you brought that up. But
it's literally like I preach about how great that actually is, because as an inspector in the field, I can actually scan that, I can take a look at it and be like, okay, this is what changed, let me make sure that we're not going back on the old code and we're just implementing the new code. So it's a great tool for our staffs in the field too. We appreciate that. Good. So let's touch on ICC as a whole. ICC, I remember a couple years back we celebrated the 30th anniversary of ICC in Long Beach. We had a great celebration there. It was an amazing celebration, but with an organization and a nonprofit specifically like ICC is, what were some of the challenges that you guys saw like expanding so quickly?
I think number one is you had to create an entrepreneurial culture, and you had to also get closer to your customers. And a lot of times nonprofits tend to be risk averse. It tends to be a tendency sometimes. We had to be very entrepreneurial. We had to be willing to take calculated risk because it's like we have a diverse grouping of clients. I mean, it's not just code officials, it's builders, it's academics, it's manufacturers. But I think the biggest thing I think that we got right was having the leadership in individuals like today, John Belsic as our CEO, previously Dominic Sims, that created an entrepreneurial culture, a culture of taking calculated risk and being able to support employees to venture out, to take some risk and work with our members, to really find out what are their needs, and then to venture out even beyond our borders. I know that my first trip, I think internationally, was probably 25 years ago, roughly, to Saudi Arabia. And I remember, touching the ground there and being scared to death. And, now I see how much the country of Saudi Arabia has been transformed.
That's got to be pretty amazing to be able to see it from where it was then to now, and to know that your organization was a major part of that. It's got to be pretty cool.
And I think the thing that was really cool was to have leadership that allowed us to take that risk. That said, Mark, go ahead and sign an agreement with the Saudis to, produce a building code. I don't know a lot of companies that would have said, yeah, go forth and prosper. Let's do this thing. But I think when we look at where we're at today and the information we've got in working with other countries, we could take that information back and look at our own system and also improve our own system. Because we'd like to think that we always have the best solution, the best answers. But when you open up your codes for worldwide usage, you begin to find that, hey, maybe there's some other ideas out there that somebody's doing something better than we are. And we can take that information back.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. We really, at least I know I learned a lot. I'm sure our viewers have learned a lot too. But before you go, we've been asking everybody some personal questions. We'd like to get to know Mark Johnson, the person, not just Mark Johnson, the COO, if that's all right with you.
That's fine.
Okay. First question we've been asking is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I probably started off wanting to be like an attorney, but not one that was a litigator. No. Somebody who defended the disenfranchised. I remember watching the movie To Kill a Mockingbird with Gregory Peck. And it left an indelible impression on me. And I looked at Gregory Peck and said, I want to be that guy.
That's awesome.
But somewhere along the way, I think my career goals changed.
So what led you from Gregory Peck to Mark Johnson, COO? Where was that transition?
Where was that transition? I think it was just a journey that evolved. I never was really certain, where I was going, but I know when I was working with both ICBO and ICC, I really enjoyed the people I was working with. I really enjoyed the culture. And I figured as long as I was with a company where the culture was right, the people were great, they were, top flight, I figured, this is going to work. And along the way, I saw ICC begin to reinvent itself. I mean, acquire other companies that could further support our membership, whether it was testing entities like NTA, or whether it was codifiers that did local municipal regulations that, like general codes that we acquired, that allowed us to get more granular and work with jurisdictions that wanted to have custom codes at the localized level. We've now set the tempo where we could better serve both the international market as well as that granular market at the very localized level. So we're always reinventing ourselves. So I think that's what kept me at ICC over nearly 40 years now, which I just had to say hi to Al Ellis because we all love Al. But I think that's what's kept me on this journey where it never got stale, it never got boring. We were always reinventing the company and growing.
Yeah, that's great. The way they say, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
True. Right? That is true, Nathan.
And by the passion that you show, I can tell that you've basically been on vacation for the last 30 years.
Yeah, it's been a long vacation.
That's awesome. All right, last question before you go. We've been asking everybody. We got some crazy answers with this one. What was your favorite live event that you ever attended? It can be a sporting event, a concert, but you just can't say Educode because that would be everybody's answer.
Okay, this is a tough one, but I'd have to go back to a football game. I can't remember the year, but I remember it was Notre Dame versus USC, and I'm a USC fan. I think they referred to it as the California earthquake because Notre Dame was ahead at half, 24-0.
Okay.
And USC came back and scored 55 unanswered points to crush Notre Dame. And there was a big man in front of us that was standing up the whole first half, blocking my view, and I was a small child. And my dad kept telling him to sit down. My son can't see the game. And he said, sorry, sir, I'm just excited. I'm a Notre Dame fan. Well, the second half, I didn't have that problem. He never got up. But yeah, that's probably the one I remember the most, Nathan.
So I'm going to try to get a little bit more out of you about that. So who was the running back for USC at that time?
Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis. There you go. All right.
AD.
That tells you a lot, right? Thank you, Mark, for joining us. You've been a pleasure, and we really appreciate you taking that time with us. For Speaking in Code, I'm Nathan Ball, joined by Topher Barnes. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah.